Look at your calendar right now. It is what, mid-February?
Yeah, mid-February.
Right. And just a few weeks ago, the year flipped over, and you made those highly ambitious, ironclad New Year's resolutions.
Oh, the classic January 1st reset.
Exactly. You promised yourself you were going to exercise every single morning.
Read 50 pages a night before bed.
Right. Or completely eliminate processed sugar from your diet. You had the vision, you felt the drive, and you probably went out and bought all the gear.
Oh, yeah, the expensive running shoes.
Always the shoes. And yet here we are in February, and that entire grand plan has completely collapsed.
It usually does.
You are hitting the snooze button. You're falling asleep, scrolling through social media instead of reading that book.
Yeah.
And that shiny gym membership tag is just sitting there on your keychain, literally gathering dust.
Which is usually the exact moment the internal critic wakes up, right, takes the microphone.
Oh, absolutely.
It's that little voice that tells you that you lack discipline, that you are inherently lazy, or, that you just don't have the grit that successful people seem to have in spades.
Yeah, the whole I am broken narrative, it's so common.
It really is.
But the incredible news we are bringing you today in this deep dive, and we're basing this on a massive stack of behavioral science and neurobiology, is that you aren't broken.
You aren't lazy.
Right. You have simply been trying to fix a behavioral problem using completely the wrong tools. It's like trying to fix a complex software issue on your computer by, I don't know, aggressively hitting the keyboard with a hammer.
That is a great analogy. It's just the wrong approach. And honestly, it is a phenomenal relief to look at the data and realize that the approach most people take to changing their lives is fundamentally at odds with how the human brain actually operates.
Completely backwards.
If you want to understand why those February resolutions failed, you have to consider the most staggering statistic from the behavioral research we reviewed.
Oh, this blew my mind.
Right. Roughly 43% of what you do every single day is done completely out of habit.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. 43%.
Yeah.
That is nearly half of our waking lives.
Almost half of your entire day involves zero conscious choice.
Wow.
You are operating entirely outside of your conscious awareness, just letting your non-conscious mind nudge your physical body to act along previously learned pathways.
So like how you instinctively respond to a stressful email.
Exactly. Or the specific route you take to commute to work. What you impulse buy at the grocery store, even just the way you tie your shoes.
43% of it is running on a hidden autopilot.
Yes. So the question we are dealing with today, the whole mission of this deep dive, isn't whether you have habits.
Right.
The question is whether you are the architect of those habits or just a passive passenger trapped in a vehicle someone else programmed.
And since we want to make this super practical, kind of like those highly effective breakdown-style videos you see on YouTube, we really want to simplify the science so you can actually use it.
Yeah.
So if nearly half of my day is running on this hidden autopilot, the first thing I want to know is, well, why can't I just step in and use my raw willpower to override the bad programming?
Ah, the willpower myth.
Yeah, because growing up, the dominant narrative was always that willpower is like a physical muscle.
Right, you flex it.
Exactly. You flex it to resist the donut in the break room. You flex it to force yourself onto the treadmill. And the theory was always that this muscle gets tired. You literally use it up.
I think the academic term you're looking for is ego depletion.
Ego depletion, yes.
Yeah.
Like a gas tank that just runs empty after making too many decisions.
Well, for decades, that strength model of self-control absolutely dominated psychology. It was everywhere.
It makes sense intuitively.
It does. The prevailing scientific idea was that willpower was a finite domain general resource. There were even highly publicized studies suggesting that willpower was directly tied to the physical glucose levels in your blood.
Oh, like blood sugar.
Exactly. The narrative was that if you use up your precious willpower resisting a chocolate chip cookie, your tank is empty. And you will physically have less willpower left to solve a complex math puzzle or, be patient with your kids later that evening.
Which sounds completely true to anyone listening. I mean, if I spend all day navigating a stressful job and resisting junk food, I feel completely exhausted by 7 p.m.
Of course you do.
I feel like my tank is completely empty. So why are modern researchers suddenly saying this whole concept is deeply flawed?
So the turning point happened when the scientific community actually attempted to replicate those early ego depletion studies.
Okay.
Across multiple independent laboratories, utilizing thousands of participants, the famous glucose depletion effect completely vanished.
Wait, it just wasn't there.
The data simply failed to hold up to rigorous modern standards. The brain wasn't literally running out of fuel. Instead, researchers like Dr. Michael Inslicht proposed a much more accurate framework.
And this is what they call the process model, right?
Exactly, the process model.
I read through Inslicht's process model in our research, and I have to say, it fundamentally changed how I view my own fatigue.
It's a game changer.
Can you break down the mechanics of what is actually happening when we feel like we've run out of willpower?
Yeah, so the process model argues that willpower failures are not about running out of metabolic fuel.
Your brain is not out of gas.
Right. What is actually happening is a biological shift in your brain's focus and its underlying motivation.
A shift in focus.
Yes. When you exert effort for a long period of time, your internal motivation shifts away from a state of control and heavily leans toward a state of gratification.
Oh, wow.
Your attention literally physically shifts away from the environmental cues that signal your long-term goals, and instead it heightens your sensitivity to cues that signal immediate indulgence and reward.
So if I skip the gym after a long workday, I'm not actually too tired to lift a weight.
No, physically you have the energy.
My brain has just strategically recalculated the landscape and decided that the immediate reward of lying on the couch is a much better evolutionary deal than the delayed reward of fitness.
You hit the nail on the head. Evolutionarily, your brain is designed to conserve energy. Prolonged effort signals to the brain that it needs to seek a quick return on investment.
That makes so much sense.
And this leads to a massive paradigm shift in how we need to view highly successful people.
Yeah, let's talk about them.
We tend to look at high achievers. You know, the people who consistently work out daily, eat well, write books, manage their finances perfectly.
Right, the ones who seem to have it all together.
And we assume they must possess superhuman willpower. We think they have an unlimited gas tank.
But they don't.
The empirical data shows they absolutely do not exert more willpower or self-control than the rest of us.
Wait, I have to stop you there. Are you saying the people running marathons and building massive companies aren't just white-knuckling it through the friction of life?
The exact opposite is true. Psychological surveys of people with high self-control reveal a fascinating paradox.
Okay, what is it?
They actually experience far fewer temptations in their daily lives than people with low self-control.
Really? Fewer temptations?
Yes. They aren't constantly fighting off the urge to eat junk food or skip work
Why not?
because they don't rely on willpower. They design better habits. They engineer their surrounding environment so that the right choice requires zero willpower and zero deliberation.
That is a total reframe.
Yes.
They aren't fighting the battle.
No.
They are avoiding the battlefield entirely.
Exact.
And to truly understand how we can mimic that, we need to dive into the neurobiology of automation. We need to look under the hood at the two very different systems of action operating inside the human brain.
Let's pull back the curtain on those two distinct neurological networks because this is where the science gets really practical.
Yeah, break it down for us.
The first is what we call the goal-directed system. This operates on action-outcome learning.
Action outcome.
Right. So when you first start a brand new behavior, let's say you are learning to drive a manual transmission car, or you're trying a complex new workout routine, you are heavily utilizing the prefrontal cortex.
And the prelimbic cortex.
Yes, and the dorsomedial striatum.
Okay, so for those of us without a neuroscience degree, those are basically the executive high-level reasoning centers of the brain, the CEO.
That's a perfect way to put it. The parts responsible for complex planning and conscious thought.
Got it.
And the defining characteristic of this goal-directed system is that it is metabolically incredibly expensive.
It takes a lot of energy.
An immense amount of cognitive energy. It requires your conscious attention and your working memory. You have to actively think about pushing the clutch in, shifting the gear, and slowly easing off the clutch.
Right.
Crucially, this system is highly sensitive to the reward. If the outcome loses its appeal, like if you suddenly realize the workout isn't giving you immediate visible results, the behavior stops immediately.
Because it requires constant justification to keep running.
Exactly.
So the goal-directed system is exhausting to use. It is the definition of high friction.
But here's the biological magic. As a behavior is repeated consistently in a stable context, a physical topographic shift happens inside your brain.
A physical shift.
Yes. Control of that specific behavior transfers away from the prefrontal cortex and hands the steering wheel over to the habitual system.
Okay, the autopilot.
Right. This system operates on stimulus response learning, and it is driven by the basal ganglia.
And the basal ganglia is the much older, primitive, deep brain structure, right?
Yes, specifically a region called the dorsolateral striatum.
So it's the part of the brain that manages our baseline survival routines, the stuff we just don't have to think about.
And because it is older and deeper, the habitual system is metabolically dirt cheap.
It saves energy.
It is incredibly efficient, it is automatic, and most importantly, it is completely outcome insensitive.
Wait, what does outcome insensitive mean?
It means once a habit is fully consolidated into the basal ganglia, the behavior persists even if the original reward that motivated you is completely gone.
Oh, wow.
You do the action simply because the environmental stimulus triggered the response. You get in the car, you see the steering wheel, and your hands just shift the gears without a single conscious thought.
I was reading through the sources, and an analogy popped into my head that really helped me visualize this transfer of power.
Let's hear it.
Think of your brain like a vast, completely overgrown field of tall grass and thick brush.
Okay, I can picture that.
When you decide to start a new habit, like going for a morning run, you are using your prefrontal cortex. You are walking a brand new path through this field, and you literally have to hack through the thick brush with a machete.
And every single step is exhausting.
Exactly. You have to think about where to put your foot. You have to fight the physical resistance of the vines. That exhausting trek is the goal-directed system.
A profoundly high-friction, high-effort environment.
But if you force yourself to take that exact same path every single morning, you start to trample the grass down. You clear the brush, the dirt gets packed down.
Right.
Eventually, if you do it long enough, that path gets paved over with smooth asphalt. You don't need the machete anymore. You don't even need to look at your feet. You just glide down the paved road at top speed.
That smooth, effortless paved road is the basal ganglia taking over.
Exactly.
And, that analogy maps beautifully onto what is physically happening inside your brain at a cellular level. It perfectly describes the biological processes known as synaptic pruning and myelination.
Oh, I was reading the Oxford University study in our research stack about this, specifically about newborn babies, and it threw me off completely.
The neuron count study.
Yes, they mapped the brains of newborns and found that infants actually have 31% more neurons than the average human adult.
It is a wild statistic.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because if they have more neurons, you'd think they would have more processing power or better habits, but it's the exact opposite. How does having fewer neurons as an adult make our automatic habits so much stronger?
It seems like a paradox until you understand how the brain optimizes for efficiency.
Okay, break it down.
A newborn's brain is like an incredibly dense, tangled web of potential. They have an excess of neurons, but very few strong, established connections between them.
So it's all brush and no paths.
Exactly. As we grow and as we begin to repeat certain behaviors, whether that behavior is learning to walk, speaking a specific language, or automatically brewing coffee, the moment we wake up, our brain physically strengthens the connections between those specific active neurons.
Okay.
It coats those pathways in a fatty substance called myelin.
Myelin.
Yeah, which acts like insulation on an electrical wire, allowing the brain's signals to travel incredibly fast and with minimal energy loss.
So myelination is literally the asphalt being poured over the dirt path.
Yes, precisely. And simultaneously, the brain engages in synaptic pruning.
Right. It looks at the 41% of connections that you are not using, and it literally prunes them away, much like a gardener cutting dead branches off a tree.
Wow.
The brain wants to allocate all of its metabolic energy to the pathways you actually use. It physically widens the trails you walk daily and completely deletes the trails you ignore.
That is just incredible.
So when you talk about building habits, we are not talking about some abstract, fluffy psychological concept. We are talking about inducing physical, biological changes in the structural architecture of your brain.
That is such a profound realization. If we can't rely on our exhaustible willpower to swing a machete through the brush every single day, we need a significantly smarter way to pave the road.
We have to engineer it.
We need to transition from relying on raw motivation to becoming behavioral engineers. And that brings us to the work of Stanford's Dr. B.J. Fogg and his incredibly elegant framework, the B equals MAP formula. B.J. Fogg is one of the absolute pioneers in the field of behavior design. His fundamental model argues that for any target behavior to happen in the real world, 3 specific elements must converge at the exact same moment.
Behavior equals motivation, ability, and a prompt.
Yes.
B equals MAP.
B equals MAP. And the strict rule of this formula is that if a habit fails, like if you sit on the couch instead of going to the gym, one of these three core elements was missing. It's essentially an equation.
It is a diagnostic equation.
Let's examine the first variable, motivation.
Okay, motivation.
Fogg's most urgent warning to anyone trying to change their life is this,
Do not rely on motivation.
which completely flies in the face of the entire multi-billion-dollar self-help industry.
Oh, complete.
Every book, every seminar on YouTube tells you you just need to find your motivation. Find your deep internal why.
And finding your why is undeniably valuable for setting long-term direction right.
Yeah.
But it is a terrible mechanism for daily execution.
Why is that? The problem is that motivation is fundamentally an emotion. It is driven by sensation, by the anticipation of a reward, and by a desire for social belonging. And like all human emotions, motivation functions exactly like a wave.
A wave.
Yes. When the wave of motivation is high, say, on January 1st, you feel invincible. You feel like you can conquer the world.
You definitely do.
You will confidently sign up for a grueling marathon. You will throw out all the junk food in your pantry. You will buy expensive running shoes. But basic psychology tells us that waves always, inevitably, crash.
And when that emotional wave crashes, you are lying in bed at 5 a.m., it is freezing cold outside, and the idea of putting on those expensive running shoes feels physically impossible.
The motivation has completely evaporated.
And when motivation is low, human beings will only do things that are easy.
Exactly. Which brings us to the second, and arguably the most vital variable in Fogg's equation, ability.
Ability. And when we look closely at Fogg's definition, ability is really just a scientific synonym for simplicity, isn't it?
Precisely. If you want a target behavior to happen reliably, regardless of whether your motivation wave is peaking or crashing, you have to drastically lower the threshold of ability required.
Make it super easy.
You have to make the behavior so simple, so effortless, that it requires almost zero motivation to execute. Fogg outlines 6 specific elements of simplicity.
I want to spend some time on these 6 elements because as I was reading the sources, I realized this is the ultimate troubleshooting checklist for the listener.
It really is.
Yeah.
Your weakest link among these 6 elements will dictate exactly how hard a habit is to form.
Okay, so if a habit isn't sticking, the answer is hiding in one of these 6 factors. What is the first element?
The first element is time. It is the most straightforward friction point.
Time, okay.
If a habit takes 30 minutes to complete and you routinely only have 10 free minutes in your morning, the behavior will mathematically fail. You have to shrink the time requirement.
Makes total sense. The second element is money.
Money introduces significant friction. If a habit requires you to pay for a premium app, buy organic ingredients, or maintain an expensive gym membership, you have created a financial barrier.
And the moment money gets tight, the habit is the first thing on the chopping block.
Exactly. The third is physical effort.
Physical effort. And this goes back to the machete analogy.
Right. Doing 100 push-ups is physically demanding. It requires high motivation. Doing one single push-up against the wall requires almost zero physical effort.
Got it.
The fourth element is mental effort, which is often the silent killer of habits.
Mental effort.
Yes. If a habit requires intense cognitive focus, complex decision-making, or heavy concentration, it is not simple.
Oh man, mental effort is where I always fail.
Really? Give me an example.
Well, if my goal is to, say, eat a healthy home-cooked dinner, right?
Okay.
But to actually do that, I have to search for a recipe, then I have to check the pantry to see if I have the right spices, figure out the prep time, and decide what temperature to set the oven.
That's a lot of steps.
The mental friction is massive. I have decision fatigue before I even start cooking. I will just pull up my phone and order a pizza.
The mental load defeats you before the physical load even begins. That is why meal prepping works on Sundays. It shifts the mental effort to the weekend, so Wednesday evening requires zero thought.
That is so true. Okay, what's the fifth element?
The fifth element is social deviance.
Social deviance. Sounds intense.
It basically asks, does this new habit force you to act in a way that breaks the established social norms of your peer group?
Oh, wow.
Humans are deeply tribal. If you are the only person in your friend group who isn't drinking alcohol at the pub on a Friday night, maintaining that habit requires an astronomical level of motivation to sustain.
Because you are constantly fighting the evolutionary urge to conform to the tribe.
Exactly. And the final sixth element is non-routine.
Non-routine,
Yeah.
meaning does it fit into my schedule?
Right. Does this new behavior naturally fit into your existing daily life, or is it a totally bizarre, disruptive new addition that forces you to completely rearrange your schedule?
So the overarching secret to the ability variable is relentlessly lowering the bar,
Lower to the floor.
shrinking the habit across all 6 of those dimensions until the ability required to execute it is practically zero. And this concept maps perfectly onto the highly popularized 2-minute rule from James Clear's work.
Yes. The 2-minute rule is arguably the most powerful tactical intervention for the early, fragile days of habit formation.
I love this rule.
The premise is that you must shrink the desired behavior down so far that it takes less than 2 minutes to complete.
Can you give us some tangible examples of shrinking a massive goal down into a 2-minute action? Because I think people struggle with this.
Sure. If your overarching goal is to read a nonfiction book every week, your daily habit is not read for an hour before bed.
Okay,
Your daily 2-minute habit is read one single page.
just one page.
Just one. If your goal is to do an hour of complex yoga, your daily habit is simply take my yoga mat out of the closet and unroll it.
Wow.
If you want to start a therapeutic journaling practice, your habit is to write one single sentence.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
I mean, hear the listener thinking right now, come on, how is writing one sentence a day going to turn me into a prolific writer? How is unrolling a piece of foam going to make me flexible?
Right.
It feels like a gimmick. It feels like a total waste of time that won't yield any real-world results.
It is a completely fair critique, but it misses the fundamental biology of what we are actually trying to achieve.
Which is what?
It is not about the content of that single sentence or the caloric burn of unrolling the mat. It is about establishing the neural pathway.
Ah, the paved road.
Yes, you are proving a new identity to your brain. You are proving that you are someone who shows up. A habit must be established before it can be optimized.
That is such a great way to phrase it.
You are simply pouring the asphalt for the road. Once the road is smoothly paved, you can drive a massive freight truck down it. You can scale the habit up to an hour of writing or a 2-hour workout.
But first, you must lay the asphalt.
And that requires eliminating all friction.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So we have motivation, which Fogg warns us is an unreliable wave. We have ability, which we maximize by shrinking the task down to 2 minutes and removing all physical and mental friction.
Right.
That leaves the final letter in the B equals MAP equation, the prompt.
The prompt is the trigger. It is the catalyst. Without a clear prompt, the behavior will never fire, even if you are highly motivated and the task is incredibly easy.
And Fogg breaks prompts down into 3 distinct types, right?
Yes, 3 types, and you need to select the right one depending on where your specific habit is currently struggling.
I was fascinated by this breakdown. Walk us through the 3 types of prompts and the mechanics of why they work.
Let's start with the spark prompt.
Spark.
You deploy a spark when ability is high, meaning the task is easy, but your motivation is severely low. A spark is designed to ignite that emotional wave.
Okay, give me an example.
An example is a text message from your running partner that says, "We miss you at the track today. Get out here." The task of putting on shoes is easy. You just lacked the emotional drive. The text message sparks the motivation you are missing.
That makes sense. What is the second type?
The facilitator prompt. This is used for the exact opposite scenario.
Okay, so when motivation is high, but ability is low.
Exactly. Your motivation is incredibly high, but your ability is low because the task feels complex or difficult. A facilitator prompt is a trigger that actively makes the behavior easier to execute in the moment.
Like what?
Think of a software pop-up on your computer that says, "Your system is out of date. Click this one button to update and restart automatically."
Oh, I see.
You have the motivation to be secure, but the ability to manually download drivers is hard. The prompt facilitates the entire process with one click.
That is so clever. And the third prompt is the one we all aspire to reach, right?
Yes, the signal prompt. You use a signal when both motivation and ability are consistently high, and your brain just needs a simple reminder of when to execute.
Just a basic trigger.
The classic example is a traffic light turning green. You already know how to drive, you have motivation to get to your destination, you just need a neutral environmental signal to tell you that now is the time to press the gas pedal.
This is such a profoundly practical framework. If the listener is currently failing to do something they want to do, they can just look at B equals MAP.
It's a perfect diagnostic tool.
Am I lacking a clear trigger? Is the task too mentally or physically hard? Or am I foolishly relying entirely on a motivational wave that has already crashed?
Exactly.
But I have a reality check here.
Okay, lay on me.
Let's say I follow the formula perfectly. I design the perfect tiny habit. I shrink it down. I set up my facilitator prompt. I've made it a 2-minute action.
Sounds good so far.
The alarm goes off, the prompt fires, and I still freeze. I just sit there on the edge of the bed and I don't do it.
Oh, yeah. You are describing one of the most frustrating phenomena in human psychology.
What is it called?
It's called the intention-behavior gap. It is the vast chasm between holding a strong conscious intention to do something and actually executing that behavior in the chaotic, real world.
Yes, the gap. I intended to stretch. I had the time. The alarm went off. I just, stared at the wall instead. What is happening in the brain there?
This is where we must introduce the groundbreaking research of Peter Gollwitzer and his concept of implementation intentions.
Implementation intention.
Gollwitzer discovered through extensive studies that basic goal intention statements like, I intend to lose weight, or I will try to read more, or I am going to stretch today, are neurologically incredibly weak.
Why are they weak?
They provide the brain with a vague desire, but they fail to provide the brain with any concrete contextual instruction on when, where, and how to act.
So the brain is just holding the desire without a roadmap.
Exactly.
What is an implementation intention then, and how does it fix the gap?
An implementation intention is a highly specific if-then plan. You explicitly delegate the decision of when to act away from your conscious mind, and you anchor it to a specific cue in your environment.
An if-then plan.
The formula is rigid. If situation X occurs, then I will perform behavior Y.
Okay, setting an if-then plan sounds incredibly simplistic. I mean, it sounds like basic scheduling.
It does.
Am I really supposed to believe that just formatting a goal like a computer script, if this, then that, suddenly makes me immune to procrastination? It feels a bit too easy.
I get that, but the statistical data on this specific intervention is nothing short of staggering.
Really?
A massive meta-analysis encompassing 94 independent tests showed that utilizing implementation intentions has an effect size of 0.65 on goal attainment.
Okay, let's translate that for the listener. What does an effect size of 0.65 actually mean in the real world of behavioral science?
Yeah. In statistics, an effect size measures how much of a difference a specific intervention actually makes. An effect size of 0.2 is considered small, 0.5 is medium, and anything above 0.8 is massive.
Got it.
So a 0.65 effect size is considered medium to large. To put it simply, people who formulate an if-then plan are vastly statistically more likely to actually execute the behavior compared to a control group that simply relies on having a strong intention.
It is an enormous mathematical advantage.
Huge.
Why does simply rephrasing the goal work so well on a neurological level, though?
Because it relies on strategic preemptive automation. By explicitly writing down that if-then sentence, you are pre-deciding your action in a moment of calm rationality.
Okay.
You are forging a strong mental link between a specific environmental cue and your desired response. So when 5 p.m. hits, your brain's non-conscious scanning system detects the cue and the behavior fires almost automatically.
You entirely bypass the prefrontal cortex.
You don't have to deliberate, you don't have to weigh the pros and cons, and you don't have to summon willpower in the moment of truth because the decision was already firmly made in the past.
You are outsourcing the heavy cognitive lifting to the environment. I love the elegance of that.
That's very elegant.
But I have to push back again. Life is not a sterile, controlled laboratory environment.
True.
I can write down a beautiful, flawless, if-then plan. If it is 5 p.m., then I will put on my running shoes and run 3 miles. But what if it is pouring freezing rain at 5 p.m.?
Right.
What if my boss calls a mandatory emergency meeting at 4:55 p.m.? A plan is great until you hit the chaotic traffic of real life.
And that is the exact vulnerability that led the scientific community to integrate implementation intentions with the work of Dr. Gabrielle Ardingen.
Ah, okay.
She recognized that plans fail when they encounter friction, so she developed an advanced protocol known as the WOP method.
WOOP.
Which stands for Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, Plan.
I am so glad we are getting to WOOP, because Eidingen's underlying findings on the danger of positive thinking absolutely blew my mind.
It's shocking.
It shattered a lot of what I thought I knew about goal setting.
It is arguably one of the most counterintuitive, myth-busting findings in modern psychology. For decades, the self-help industry and the cultural zeitgeist have relentlessly preached the power of pure, positive visualization.
The advice is always, visualize your success. Imagine crossing the finish line. Create a vision board.
Exactly. Ottingen tested this rigorously in the lab, measuring people who used a pure positive visualization against control groups.
And what did she find?
She found that engaging in pure positive visualization actually decreases your chances of achieving the goal.
That sounds completely backward. If I am sitting down and vividly imagining myself achieving my fitness goals, how on earth is that making me less likely to go to the gym?
Because the brain is incredibly bad at distinguishing between vivid imagination and reality.
Oh, wow.
When you sit down and intensely, vividly imagine achieving your goal, your brain experiences it physiologically as if the goal has already been accomplished.
Wait, literally?
Uttingen's researchers literally measured a significant drop in the subject's systolic blood pressure. Their bodies physically relaxed.
That is wild.
Pure positive fantasy demobilizes the physiological energy and the stress response arousal that you actually need to pursue the difficult goal. Your subconscious basically says, "Great job, we did it, we got the reward, time to rest."
That is genuinely terrifying. Millions of people are actively sabotaging their own goals by daydreaming about their success.
They are bleeding off the necessary tension.
Because the tension is required for action.
Exactly. So, to generate the actual physiological energy needed to act, Ottingen discovered a technique called mental contrasting.
Mental contrasting.
You are allowed to visualize the positive outcome, but then you must immediately vividly contrast that outcome with a specific, highly realistic internal obstacle that is standing in your way.
Let's walk through a concrete scenario using the WOOP framework to see how this mental contrasting plays out in real life.
Okay, let's say your wish is to completely stop eating junk food late at night.
Okay, a very common wish.
The first the outcome is how great it will feel. You visualize waking up, feeling energetic, lean, and proud of yourself.
Right.
But instead of stopping there and dropping your blood pressure, you immediately pivot to the second O, the obstacle.
The reality check.
You ask yourself, what is the harsh reality of what will stop me? You dig deep and realize the internal obstacle is that when I feel exhausted and stressed after a long workday, I actively crave sugar to numb out and comfort myself.
You're identifying the exact point of failure.
Precisely. Now, you generate the plan using an implementation intention to neutralize that specific obstacle.
Bringing you back to if-then.
Yes, you create your if-then bypass route. If I feel the powerful urge to eat sugar tonight because I'm stressed from work, then I will immediately drink a large glass of sparkling water and do 2 minutes of deep box breathing.
It is brilliant because you are preloading the troubleshooting.
Yes, exactly.
You aren't pretending the obstacle won't happen. You are accepting that it's inevitable, and you are building an automated bridge right over it.
You are anticipating the exact roadblock that historically derails your willpower, and you are hardwiring a response before the emotional temptation can hijack your brain.
Here's where this gets really interesting.
Oh, I know where you're going.
We have talked about using if-then plans to overcome specific negative obstacles. But what if we want to proactively build a completely new, positive daily routine?
Right.
There is a highly specialized, incredibly powerful variation of the if-then plan that takes advantage of the brain's existing paved roads that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the concept of habit stacking.
Habit stacking is widely considered the ultimate shortcut in behavior design. The core concept was originally framed by B.J. Fogg as utilizing anchor habits, and it was later famously distilled and labeled habit stacking by James Clear.
The formula for habit stacking is beautifully, elegantly simple. After I current habit, I will new habit.
The underlying neuroscience behind why this specific formulation works is pure genius. Think back to our discussion on synaptic pruning and myelination.
Okay.
Your brain already possesses dozens of highly myelinated, super efficient neural highways. The act of brewing your morning coffee, the act of brushing your teeth, the sequence of taking off your work shoes when you walk through the door.
Or plugging your phone into the charger at night?
Yes. These behaviors are rock solid, they are fully automated, they run on pure basal ganglia autopilot.
They are the massive 10-lane paved highways in my brain.
Exactly. Instead of trying to build a brand new cue from scratch, which, as we discussed, requires hacking through the unpaved brush with your prefrontal machete, you simply hijack an existing highway.
I love that.
You seamlessly attach your tiny, new, desired habit directly onto the tail end of a deeply entrenched old habit. You get the environmental trigger entirely for free.
So instead of setting a vague goal and saying, I'm going to start meditating every day, which has no specific cue and relies entirely on memory and motivation.
Right, which will fail.
You stack it. You say, after I pour my morning cup of coffee, I will immediately sit on the cushion and meditate for 1 single minute.
The pouring of the hot coffee serves as the definitive cue. The brain's deeply ingrained cue routine reward loop is already successfully firing for the coffee routine.
And you just slide right in.
You are simply slipping a tiny, low-friction new behavior into the slipstream of that existing, powerful neurological loop.
But as I read through the sources, there was a stark warning. The literature noted there are some very common pitfalls here. People try habit stacking, they fail, and they claim the system doesn't work.
Oh, there are definite rules.
Rule number 1. The anchor habit you choose must be highly undeniably specific.
Precision is everything in behavioral design. You absolutely cannot use a vague, sprawling window of time as an anchor for a new habit.
Give me an example of a bad anchor.
Saying, after breakfast, I will meditate, is a catastrophically bad stack.
Why?
Breakfast is not a specific trigger, it is a prolonged event. It is a window of time that varies daily. However, saying, after I rinse my breakfast plate and physically place it into the dishwasher, I will meditate, is a perfect anchor.
Ah, I see the difference.
It is a specific, observable, binary, physical action that happens exactly the same way every time.
The second rule is just as critical. The new habit you are stacking must be tiny. We are right back to the 2-minute rule.
Yes.
Saying, after I pour my coffee, I will go outside and run for 3 miles is a terrible, doomed stack.
It is doomed because the friction mismatch is too severe. The new target behavior must perfectly match the physical and cognitive energy state you were in during the anchor habit.
That makes a lot of sense.
If you are groggy and pouring coffee, a 3-mile run is a massive cognitive leap. But saying, after I pour my coffee, I will drop and do 5 push-ups works beautifully.
Because it's fast.
Exactly. Saying, after I take off my rigid work shoes, I will instantly change into my comfortable gym clothes works because the energy barrier is almost non-existent. You are just trying to get the physical momentum going in the right direction.
And to ensure that momentum is truly effortless, we have to look outside of our own heads. We cannot ignore the physical space around us. Let's pivot and talk about environment design.
Environment design is huge.
The research of Dr. Wendy Wood at USC definitively shows that the invisible hand of our physical environment will almost always brutally defeat our conscious intentions over a long enough timeline.
Human beings constantly, systematically underestimate the immense power of physical proximity and structural friction.
We think we are stronger than our surroundings.
We really do. But if you want a positive habit to stick permanently, you must proactively decrease the physical friction required for the good behavior. And you must radically, aggressively increase the physical friction required for the bad behavior.
I absolutely loved the specific anecdote from the sources about Dr. Wood herself. It perfectly illustrates this.
The kick story.
Yes, here is a leading behavioral scientist. She studies willpower and habit formation for a living, and she loves to bake.
Right.
But she knows that if she bakes a cake, she doesn't want to mindlessly eat the entire thing throughout the week. So what does the world's leading habit expert do? She doesn't rely on her world-class knowledge or willpower.
Not at all.
She bakes the cake, she eats 1 slice, and she immediately wraps the rest up and shoves it into the deep freezer.
It is a brilliant intervention because of its sheer physical simplicity. She artificially introduced a masked wall of physical friction.
A literal wall of ice.
Frozen, rock-hard cake is not immediately appealing to the brain's reward centers. If she wants a second piece on a Tuesday night, she has to consciously decide to take it out of the freezer, put it on a plate, and wait 45 minutes for it to thaw.
Wow.
She physically forced the behavior out of the mindless, automatic basal ganglia and shoved it back into the conscious, highly effortful prefrontal cortex.
She forced her future self to have to pick up the machete and hack through the brush if she really wanted that cake.
That is the essence of environment design. If you genuinely want to stop doom scrolling on your smartphone in bed, do not rely on a motivational promise to yourself.
What do you do instead?
Simply leave the phone charger in the kitchen. You have radically increased the friction. If you want to practice playing the guitar more often, do not leave it zipped up in its heavy case in the back of your closet.
Right, because out of sight, out of mind.
Buy a cheap stand and leave the guitar right in the middle of your living room, directly next to the couch. You have completely removed the friction.
Okay, so we have covered the architecture of paving the road for good, positive habits. But what about the truly dark, stubborn, deeply entrenched bad habit?
The tough ones.
The ones where the biological temptation or the dopamine hit is so overwhelmingly strong that even adding a little bit of physical friction isn't nearly enough. How do you forcefully stop yourself from walking down an incredibly well-paved, highly myelinated neural highway that you consciously know is leading you right off a cliff?
When friction isn't enough, we must escalate our tactics. This is where we introduce the heavy machinery of behavior change, commitment devices, and the deeply fascinating economic concept known as egonomics.
Egonomics. That is a brilliant term. It sounds like the financial management of the ego.
It was originally coined by the Nobel laureate behavioral economist Thomas Schelling. Economics is rooted in the profound, somewhat unsettling realization that a single human being actually contains multiple, heavily competing versions of themselves across time.
Multiple versions of myself.
Yes, your present self, the rational, calm version of you that is listening to this deep dive right now, has excellent long-term goals. Your present self desperately wants to be healthy, wealthy, productive, and well-rested.
My idealized Sunday afternoon planning self.
Exactly. But your future self, the version of you that exists at 5 p.m. on a Friday after a grueling, highly stressful week of work, is exhausted, cognitively depleted, highly tempted, and just wants to sink into the couch, eat the junk food, and get that easy, cheap dopamine hit.
I know that guy all too well.
The core problem of the human condition is that your present self and your future self want completely fundamentally different things.
It is an internal civil war over resources.
And if you leave the outcome of that war up to willpower in the heat of the moment, the exhausted 5 p.m. future self will win almost every single time.
Because of the biology we talked about.
Exactly. Because of hyperbolic discounting, the brain prioritizes immediate rewards over future gains. Commitment devices are strategic tools that allow your present, rational self to lock in rigid rules and heavily constrain the choices of your future, tempted self long before the temptation even arrives.
The sources reference the classic mythological concept of Odysseus tied to the mast. It is the perfect metaphor.
It really is.
Odysseus was sailing past the island of the Sirens. He knew for a fact that the Sirens' magical song was overwhelmingly tempting. He knew his future self would lose his mind and steer his beloved ship straight into the jagged rocks to his death.
He knew he would fail.
So while his present self was still calm and rational, he issued an unbreakable order. He had his men tie him tightly to the ship's mast, and he had his crew plug their own ears with thick beeswax. He completely physically removed his future self's ability to ruin his life.
It is the ultimate historical commitment device, and we can replicate that exact strategy in modern everyday life using what behavioral economists call a three-layer stack of commitment devices.
A three-layer stack.
We escalate the severity based on how stubborn the bad habit is. The first layer is environmental.
Which builds on Wendy Wood's friction concepts we just discussed, removing the easy exit.
Correct, but making it significantly harder to bypass. It means using a software application like Cold Turkey to completely, irreversibly block distracting websites and social media during your designated writing hours.
Oh, wow. Irreversibly.
It means calling your IT department and having them block certain sites. In finance, it means setting up your bank account to automatically forcefully deposit 10% of your paycheck directly into an untouchable retirement account before you even see the money in your checking account.
You just don't even give yourself the choice.
You make the correct long-term action the default state, so doing the wrong thing requires active, painful, annoying effort.
But let's say the temptation is too strong, and I just, figure out how to uninstall the website blocker. If the environmental layer isn't enough to hold me back, what do?
We move to layer 2, which leverages our biology. Social commitment.
Social commitment.
We are fundamentally deeply social creatures bred by evolution to care intensely about our standing in the tribe. We care deeply about our reputation because, historically, being exiled from the tribe meant death.
Right.
You can leverage that primal fear. You don't just privately tell yourself, I am going to write a book this year. You walk up to a specific, highly respected colleague or a mentor and you say, I commit to sending you a completed draft of Chapter 1 by 5 p.m. this Friday. If I don't, I want you to call me out on it.
Ooh, that puts the pressure on.
Suddenly, your professional reputation and your social standing are firmly on the line. The psychological friction of having to look someone in the eye and admit you failed is often much stronger than the physical friction of sitting down to do the work.
And if both environmental and social constraints aren't cutting it, if the bad habit is just that deeply entrenched, we have to bring out the absolute heavy artillery. Layer 3.
Layer 3, financial commitment.
Financial commitment devices rely on a foundational psychological principle identified by Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman, known as loss aversion, right?
Yes. Kahneman proved that the human brain is hardwired to feel the pain of losing something roughly twice as intensely as we feel the pleasure of gaining that exact same thing.
The asymmetry of emotion. Losing a $50 bill on the street ruins my day way more than finding a $50 bill improves it.
Exactly. The negative spike is massive. So how do we weaponize our own loss aversion for our benefit?
How do we?
You utilize modern commitment platforms like Stick or BeMinder. These platforms require you to literally put your own hard-earned money on the line.
I've heard of these. They are intense.
You sign a binding digital contract that says, if my smart scale does not register that I have lost 2 pounds by the end of this month, or if I don't log 3 verified workouts this week, the application will automatically charge my credit card $100.
Wow.
And crucially, you can choose to have that money sent to an anti-charity, a political cause, or an organization that you actively, passionately despise.
That is spectacularly, brilliantly evil. Sending your own money to a cause you fundamentally disagree with, the motivation to avoid that must be astronomical.
It works so effectively because it completely alters the immediate short-term math of procrastination.
It makes it real.
Suddenly, skipping the gym on a rainy Tuesday isn't just a vague conceptual delay in your long-term fitness goals. It is an immediate, highly painful, visceral loss of your own money to an enemy cause. You take the long-term consequences of bad habits and you drag them violently into the present moment.
Okay, this is an incredible toolkit. We have learned how to stack our new habits onto existing neural pathways. We have optimized our physical environment for low friction. We have tied ourselves to the mast with environmental, social, and financial commitment devices.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We are finally executing the plan. Naturally, human instinct kicks in, and the very next thing the listener is going to want to do is visually track all of this amazing progress.
Oh, of course.
They're going to download a shiny new habit tracker app, or they're going to buy a giant calendar for the wall and start drawing big red X's on it every day.
Which is an incredibly common next step, and to be fair, highly effective in the very early stages. But the data reveals that this exact point, the introduction of tracking, is where everything can completely disastrously fall apart. Visual tracking is a dangerous double-edged sword.
Let's dedicate some time to the trap of the streak. First, let's look at the positive side. Why do we feel such a deep psychological need to track days in the first place?
We track days because the actual biological rewiring of our brain, the myelination and synaptic pruning, happens completely in the dark.
We can't see it.
Right. You cannot look in the bathroom mirror after a week of running and literally see your neural pathways thickening. The physical and psychological changes are entirely invisible and imperceptible at first. You don't see weight loss on day 3.
It feels like you're doing nothing.
So we need to artificially make the invisible progress visible by counting days. A habit tracker acts as a crucial behavioral scaffold.
And it feels undeniably, viscerally good to take a pen and aggressively check that box at the end of the day.
That feeling is pure dopamine. In the first few weeks of establishing a new habit, the behavior itself is usually highly uncomfortable. It requires immense prefrontal effort.
Let's be honest, you are not getting a massive dopamine hit from the sheer joy of a freezing 5 a.m. run.
No, you are getting the dopamine hit from the reward prediction error of finally getting to check the box on your tracker. The visual streak becomes the temporary surrogate reward that bridges the motivational gap until the habit eventually becomes automated and intrinsically rewarding.
But the sources highlight a massive tipping point where this goes wrong. It's an economic principle called Goodhart's Law.
Goodhart's Law is a principle that states, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
I love that quote.
It explains so many failures in corporate environments, and it applies perfectly to personal habits. People get so hyper-obsessed with the visual aesthetic of the unbroken streak that they completely forget why they started the habit in the first place.
Right.
They will do a terrible, sloppy, 5-minute half workout just to keep the digital streak alive on their app. They stop acting out of a genuine desire for personal growth, and they start acting entirely out of loss aversion, the terrified fear of losing the number they built up.
The streak transforms from a helpful scaffold into an incredibly fragile psychological cage. And the ultimate question is, what happens when that fragile cage inevitably breaks?
It always does.
What happens when real life gets chaotic? You get the flu, you have a family emergency, and you unavoidably miss a day.
What's fascinating here is the total psychological collapse that immediately follows a broken streak. It is a well-documented cognitive distortion known in the psychological literature as the abstinence violation effect, or AVE.
I saw it referred to in some studies as the what the hell effect.
That is exactly how it manifests in the brain. When a pristine 48-day streak breaks, binary black and white thinking completely takes over the prefrontal cortex.
Okay.
Because you missed day 49, your brain looks at the glaring zero on the tracker and screams, all of our hard work is gone, the streak is dead, we are entirely back to square one.
You feel like a total failure.
You are flooded with intense feelings of shame, guilt, and a profound sense of total failure. To rapidly escape those painful negative emotions, your brain rationalizes, what the hell, the perfect streak is ruined anyway, I might as well eat the entire box of cookies.
Oh man, I have been there so many times.
And you completely abandon the overarching goal. A single, insignificant missed day spirals into a total, catastrophic behavioral regression.
But wait, if we look back at the neurobiology we discussed earlier, the myelination, the paved roads, that feeling of being back to square one is completely biologically false, right?
Entirely false.
A single missed day of running doesn't magically erase the physical myelin sheath that has been building up in your basal ganglia for a month.
It is entirely false, and we have the rigorous statistical proof to back that up. The famous University College London study led by researcher Philippa Lally tracked 96 adults trying to form various new daily habits.
Okay.
First of all, her data definitively proved that the cultural trope of it takes 21 days to form a habit is a complete myth.
I've always wondered where that 21-day number came from. It is everywhere.
It originated from a plastic surgeon in the 1960s who noticed it took his patients about 21 days to get used to their new faces.
Wait, really? That has nothing to do with habits.
It had nothing to do with habit formation, but self-help authors latched onto it because it sounded catchy. Lally's actual peer-reviewed data showed that the median time to reach true neurological automaticity was actually 66 days.
66 days.
With a massive range from 18 days to 254 days, heavily dependent on the complexity of the specific habit.
66 days is the median. That requires significantly more patience than we are typically sold. But what did her data show about the dreaded missed days?
This is the most crucial, liberating finding of the entire study. Lally's team found that missing one single day of a habit execution had absolutely zero statistical impact on the long-term formation of that habit.
Zero impact.
The neural pathway does not vanish overnight. Think back to our dirt path through the field. If you walk that path and trample the grass every day for 47 days, taking one day off does not cause the thick brush to magically grow back to full height overnight.
The path is still clearly there.
If you walk it again the next day, you pick up exactly where you left off.
So the biological problem isn't actually losing the habit. The problem is the highly destructive narrative story we tell ourselves about losing the arbitrary digital streak.
Exactly.
So how do we fix this? How do we track our progress safely in those early days? How do we build tracking systems that actively prevent the abstinence violation effect?
The sources outline 4 highly effective protocols for healthy tracking that act as psychological guardrails against perfectionism.
Let's go through them.
Protocol 1 is the pardon rule. You pre-plan structured, sanctioned flexibility into your tracker. At the beginning of the month, you explicitly give yourself 2 pardons.
Pardons, I like that.
If you get sick or life gets crazy and you miss a day, you actively use a pardon. The box gets a different symbol, and the streak officially continues. This entirely prevents the psychological collapse of resetting to zero because the miss was part of the plan.
That is brilliant. It acknowledges reality without triggering the what the hell effect. What is Protocol 2?
Protocol 2 is the 2-day rule. The philosophy here is that you can absolutely miss one day that is just a random statistical event, but you absolutely, under no circumstances, can allow yourself to miss 2 days in a row.
Why not 2 days?
Because missing 2 days in a row is the neurobiological beginning of a brand new negative habit loop. The recovery the next day must be non-negotiable and automatic.
I love the firm boundaries of the 2-day rule. It gives you grace for the chaos of life, but it demands immediate, uncompromising accountability the very next morning. Let's build on that with the 3rd protocol.
Protocol 3 is dual tracking. The danger of standard trackers is that they are binary, just a yes or a no. Dual tracking requires you to track qualitative feelings alongside the quantitative metric. You don't just check the box. You jot down one single descriptive word next to the check mark about how the habit actually felt that day.
Like what?
You write energized, exhausted, peaceful, or rushed. This forces your brain to stay intimately connected to the internal subjective experience of the behavior
Yeah.
rather than becoming mindlessly obsessed with the external objective metric of the streak.
And finally, Protocol 4, which I think is the scariest but most necessary step, the intentional sunset.
Yes, the intentional sunset. You must realize that a habit tracker is a temporary set of training wheels. You cannot let the counter run to infinity.
Because then it's just a cage again.
Exactly. You must pre-select a specific date, perhaps day 90 or day 100, to deliberately, ceremoniously delete the tracking app off your phone, throw the paper calendar into the recycling bin, and graduate. You must let go of the behavioral scaffold and trust the architecture you have built.
So we delete the app. We let go of the scaffold. But what does this all ultimately mean? We are graduating from the tracker. What exactly are we graduating to?
If we connect all of these neurobiological and behavioral concepts to the bigger picture of human flourishing, we are ultimately talking about facilitating a fundamental shift in personal identity.
Identity shift.
True, enduring automation happens when a habit finally shifts from being something you're actively doing to becoming an inextricable part of something you are being.
Wow, doing to being.
You move from saying, I am on day 40 of a grueling no-sugar challenge, which is a highly fragile, metric-dependent state, to casually stating, I am simply someone who prioritizes my physical energy and my long-term mental clarity.
That is the ultimate destination of all this science. When the behavior becomes a true reflection of your core identity, you no longer need to exert any willpower to execute it.
You don't need a tracker.
You just act naturally in perfect alignment with the truth of who you are.
The behavior is no longer an unwelcome guest in your daily routine. It has moved in permanently and become part of the foundational structure of your life.
So look closely at your own life right now. Look back at those collapsed, ambitious February resolutions. Do not attempt to resurrect the entire massive high-friction plan using pure willpower.
It won't work.
I challenge you to utilize the science we uncovered today. Pick just one microscopic tiny habit. Find a rock-solid, incredibly reliable anchor in your existing morning routine, like the moment your feet hit the floor or the moment you turn on the shower.
Build that stack.
Write out your precise, after I do X, I will do Y implementation formula and just test it tomorrow morning. Don't worry about tracking it for the rest of your life. Just test the physical friction of it.
Stop trying to muscle through the brush and start being the architect of your own paved roads.
And I want to leave you with one final provocative concept to mull over as you go about your day. We have spent this entire deep dive heavily focused on the mechanics of how to build new, automatic routines to save our precious cognitive energy. But if our ancient brains are so perfectly, ruthlessly designed to put repeated behaviors onto an invisible autopilot, what if the most powerful, life-changing habit you could ever possibly build is actually a meta-habit?
A meta habit.
What if you deliberately scheduled a routine, maybe just one afternoon a quarter, specifically designed to rigorously audit, question, and aggressively dismantle the dozens of invisible, accidental habits that are quietly, non-consciously running 43% of your life?
Now, that is a truly high-level cognitive intervention, stepping entirely outside of the system to examine the system itself.
Because if 43% of your life is operating on an automatic, non-conscious X-ray, you better make absolute sure that you are actually looking at your own bones and not a skeleton that was built for you by someone else. Thanks for diving deep with us.